I was lying in intensive care, tubes in my arms when my phone rang with the call that changed everything. The bank manager's voice was shaking. What he told me made my heart monitor scream. My name is Patricia Henderson, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived in Seattle my whole life, raised 2 children, built a beautiful home, and saved every penny for 50 years. Right now, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments because what happened to me could happen to anyone, anywhere. It started 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday morning. I was having coffee when the chest pains hit. Sharp, crushing pain that dropped me to my knees. My daughter Sandra found me collapsed in the kitchen. The ambulance came screaming down our quiet street while neighbors gathered on their porches. The hospital admitted me straight to intensive care. Heart attack, a serious one. The doctors said I'd been minutes away from death. For 5 days, I drifted in and out of consciousness, surrounded by beeping machines and worried faces. Sandra and my son Michael took turns sitting beside my bed, holding my hand, telling me everything would be fine. I believed them. God help me. I believed every word. By day 6, I was stable but weak. The doctors wanted to keep me another week for observation. My children insisted on staying close, helping with everything. Sandra brought my mail. Michael handled my bills. They were so attentive, so caring. Everyone said how lucky I was to have such devoted children. On day 7, my phone rang at 2 in the afternoon. The nurse handed it to me, and I heard a voice I'd known for 23 years. Mrs. Henderson, this is Thomas Harrison from First National Bank. I need to speak with you urgently about your accounts. My heart rate jumped. The monitors beeped faster. What's wrong? I managed to whisper. Ma'am, we received a request this morning to change the mailing address on all your accounts. The new address is in Spokane. We also received transfer authorizations for your savings accounts, all of them. The total amount is $1.6 million. The room started spinning. I didn't authorize anything, I said, my voice cracking. I know, ma'am. That's why I'm calling. The signatures looked off to me. I've processed your transactions for over 2 decades. I know your signature. These didn't match. But Mrs. Henderson... He paused, and I heard him take a deep breath. The request came with your daughter's contact information. She listed herself as your power of attorney. My blood turned to ice. I never gave her power of attorney, I whispered. I thought as much. Mrs. Henderson, I'm obligated to process this request by Friday, unless you come in personally to stop it. Can you do that? I looked at the IV in my arm, the monitors, the tubes. I'm in intensive care. Then I'll stall as long as I can, but you need to act fast. He hung up. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my whole world crumbling around me. My children were stealing everything I had. While I fought for my life, I couldn't breathe, and this time it wasn't my heart. This was pure betrayal crushing my chest. My own children, the babies I'd nursed, the teenagers I'd sacrificed everything for, the adults I'd helped through every crisis, were robbing me blind while I lay dying. The nurse rushed in because my heart monitor was going crazy. She adjusted my medication, told me to calm down, asked if I was in pain. I nodded, but it wasn't physical pain. This was something much worse. I had to think. I had to plan. But my mind was foggy from medication and shock. Sandra came that evening with flowers and a bright smile. How are you feeling, Mom? You look so much better today. I studied her face. The same green eyes I'd looked into 1,000 times. The same smile she'd had since childhood. How could someone so familiar suddenly be a complete stranger? I'm tired, I said carefully. The doctors say I need rest. Of course. Don't worry about anything at home. Michael and I are handling everything. She patted my hand. We've got your mail, your bills, everything. You just focus on getting better. Every word was a knife. That's so thoughtful, I said, keeping my voice weak. What would I do without you both? You'll never have to find out, Mom. We're here for you. Always. She kissed my forehead and left. I watched her walk away, designer purse on her shoulder, the purse I'd bought her last Christmas for $800, money I'd saved from my teacher's pension. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the past 5 years since Robert died, how Sandra had suddenly become so interested in my finances, how she'd suggested I needed help managing my accounts, how Michael had brought over those important papers for me to sign when I had the flu. Had I signed something then? I'd been so sick, fever of 103, could barely see straight. Michael had stood over me, pointing to signature lines, saying it was just updated beneficiary forms. Had that been the power of attorney? The next morning, I called my lawyer's office from the hospital phone. David Morrison had handled Robert's estate. He was sharp, thorough, and most importantly, he knew my family. Patricia, I heard about your heart attack. How are you holding up? David, I need you to come to the hospital today. Don't call my children, don't tell anyone you're coming, and bring everything we need to revoke a power of attorney. Silence on the line. Then, what happened? They're trying to steal everything, $1.6 million. They think I'm too sick to notice. His voice went cold and professional. I'll be there in an hour. Don't sign anything. Don't tell them you know. And Patricia, we're going to stop this. After I hung up, Michael arrived with breakfast. Pancakes from my favorite diner, orange juice, coffee made just how I like it. Thought you could use some real food instead of hospital garbage, he said cheerfully. I looked at my son, 6 feet tall, strong, successful, a pharmaceutical sales rep making 6 figures. And somehow, that wasn't enough. He needed my money too. Thank you, sweetheart, I said, taking the coffee with trembling hands. You're so good to me. Michael sat down, scrolling through his phone. Sandra and I were thinking, Mom, when you get out of here, maybe you should come stay with one of us for a while, just until you're stronger. My stomach turned. They wanted me under their watch, controlled, isolated. That's sweet, but I'll be fine at home. I've got my neighbors, my church friends. Mom, you collapsed alone. What if it happens again? We'd feel terrible if something happened and we weren't there to help. I'll think about it, I said, putting just enough weakness in my voice. He seemed satisfied. We made small talk about his work, his wife, Jennifer, their kids, my grandchildren. I thought about them. Emma, 9 years old, and Jason, 7. Did they know their father was a thief? Would they grow up thinking this was acceptable? David arrived at 11, carrying his briefcase and wearing his courtroom face. Michael had just left. Tell me everything, David said, pulling up a chair. I told him about the bank manager's call, the address change to Spokane, the transfer authorizations, Sandra's fake power of attorney claim. David took notes, his jaw getting tighter with every detail. Do you remember signing any power of attorney documents? No, but Michael brought papers when I had the flu last winter. February, I think. He said they were beneficiary updates. Did you read them? I tried. I couldn't see clearly. Fever, medication. He kept saying it was routine, that I needed to update everything after Robert died. My voice broke. I trusted him, David. He's my son. David's expression softened for just a moment. I know, but right now we need to focus on protecting your assets. First, we revoke any power of attorney, legitimate or forged. Second, we go to the bank tomorrow and stop these transfers. Third, we document everything for potential criminal charges. Criminal charges against my own children? Patricia, they're committing bank fraud and elder abuse. If that power of attorney is forged, it's also forgery and identity theft. This isn't a family squabble. This is serious crime. I closed my eyes. My children, criminals. What do we do? Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we need to get you released from the hospital. Doctor's approval or against medical advice, your choice. Then we walk into First National Bank and we shut this down. I'll contact Mr. Harrison and let him know we're coming. They'll know I found out. Yes, and that's when things will get ugly. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Sandra's smile, Michael's pancakes, 50 years of birthday parties and Christmas mornings and family dinners. Then I thought about them forging documents, lying to banks, planning to take everything while I fought for my life. I'm prepared, I said. I want my lawyer present when I confront them. I want everything documented. And David, I want them to know exactly what they've done. He nodded. I'll arrange everything. Try to rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. That night, Sandra called to check on me. Her voice was honey-sweet, full of concern. I played along, weak and grateful. I hung up with Sandra and stared at the phone in my hand. How many times had I talked to my daughter without knowing she was plotting against me? How many concerned phone calls were really just checking to see if I was still too sick to notice what they were doing? The nurse came in for evening rounds. "How's your pain level, Mrs. Henderson?" "About a 7, I lied. The physical pain was manageable. The emotional pain was off every chart. "I can increase your medication." "No, thank you. I need to stay clear-headed." She gave me a concerned look but nodded and left. I couldn't afford to be drugged up. Tomorrow I needed to be sharp, strong, and ready to fight. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw memories. Sandra at 5 years old crying because she fell off her bike. Me cleaning her scraped knee, kissing it better. Michael at 12, nervous before his first middle school dance. Me straightening his tie, telling him he looked handsome. Their graduations, their weddings, the births of my grandchildren. Where had it gone wrong? Morning came too slowly and too fast. Dr. Patel arrived at 7 for rounds. "Mrs. Henderson, your numbers look good. Heart rate stable, blood pressure improving, but I'd like to keep you at least 3 more days." "Dr. Patel, I need to leave today. I have urgent business matters that require my immediate attention." He frowned. "You've had a serious cardiac event. You need rest and observation." "I understand the risks, but this can't wait. I'll sign whatever release forms you need." We argued for 20 minutes. Finally, he agreed to discharge me with strict conditions. Minimal physical activity, follow-up appointments scheduled, a long list of medications, and a stern warning about the dangers of stress. "Whatever this business is, Mrs. Henderson, it better be worth risking your health." "It's worth everything," I said quietly. David arrived at 9 with clothes from my house. He'd gotten my spare key from the neighbor. Professional slacks, a blazer, sensible shoes, battle armor. Getting dressed exhausted me. My hands shook, buttoning the blouse. David had to help with my shoes. I looked in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized myself. Pale, thin, aged 10 years in 1 week. But my eyes were clear and hard. "Ready?" David asked. "One thing first." I pulled out my phone and called Sandra. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart. I'm being discharged today. The doctors say I'm doing so well." "That's wonderful. Do you need me to pick you up?" No. A friend from church is coming. I just wanted you to know I'll be home this afternoon." "Okay. I'll stop by tonight to check on you." "That would be lovely." I hung up and looked at David. "Now, they know I'm mobile. They'll panic. They'll try to rush the transfers." "Good. Panicked people make mistakes. And Mr. Harrison is expecting us at 10:30. He's flagged all your accounts as requiring in-person authorization for any changes." The hospital wheelchair felt like a throne as they rolled me out to David's car. I was weak, exhausted, and terrified. But I was also angry. And anger, I was about to learn, could be more powerful than any medicine. The drive to First National Bank took 15 minutes. David kept glancing at me, probably worried I'd have another heart attack right there in his Mercedes. "You're sure you're up for this?" he asked. "David, I spent 50 years saving every dollar. I worked as a teacher for 35 years. I took summer jobs. I clipped coupons. Robert and I never took expensive vacations. We drove used cars. We saved and invested and sacrificed so we'd have security in our old age. That money represents every hour I stood in front of a classroom, every weekend I graded papers, every sacrifice I made." My voice was steel. "I'm up for this." First National Bank sat on the corner of 5th and Madison, a solid brick building where I'd done business since 1978. I knew every teller, every manager. They'd celebrated with me when Robert and I paid off our mortgage. They'd helped me navigate finances after he died. Mr. Harrison met us in the lobby. He was 60, gray-haired, and looked genuinely distressed. "Mrs. Henderson, thank God you're all right. When I heard about your heart attack..." He shook his head. "Come to my office. We need to talk privately." His office was quiet, professional, lined with family photos. He closed the door and pulled out a thick folder. "Here's everything. The address change request came in Monday. Your daughter called first, said you were in intensive care and had asked her to handle your affairs. She provided what she claimed was power of attorney documentation. Then she submitted written requests to change your mailing address to a Spokane address and to transfer funds from your 3 savings accounts into a new checking account." "Let me see the power of attorney," David said. Mr. Harrison slid the document across his desk. David studied it, then showed it to me. My signature was there, but something was wrong. "This is dated February 14th, David said. "Patricia, is this your signature?" I looked closely. It was similar, but not quite right. The P in Patricia, I always loop it twice. This one only looped once. The H in Henderson had a different slant. "It's forged," I said. "That's not my signature, and I never signed any power of attorney, ever." Mr. Harrison's face went grim. "That's what I suspected. Mrs. Henderson, I've processed your signatures for 23 years. I know your handwriting. This was close, but it wasn't right. That's why I called you instead of processing the request." "What about the transfer authorizations?" David asked. "Also forged. Same handwriting. They were trying to move funds in stages. 200,000 this week, another 300,000 next week, spreading it out to avoid immediate red flags. The full transfers would have cleared by the end of the month. $1.6 million. Gone. My entire life's savings." "Can we stop it completely?" I asked. "Already done. I've flagged all your accounts. Nothing moves without your in-person authorization. I've also documented everything and reported the suspected fraud to our security department." David leaned forward. "Mr. Harrison, we need copies of everything, every document, every request, every communication with Sandra Henderson, time-stamped and certified." Mr. Harrison nodded. "I'll have everything ready within the hour. Mrs. Henderson, I need you to sign new authorization forms. We'll also set up additional security measures, password verification, dual authentication for any transactions over $5,000. My hands were shaking as I signed the real documents, my real signature, with the proper loops and slants, the signature of a woman who'd worked honestly for 50 years, who'd never stolen anything, who'd raised her children to know right from wrong. Apparently, that last part failed spectacularly. "There's something else," Mr. Harrison said quietly. "Your daughter called this morning. Twice. Very insistent about when the transfers would be processed. She seemed agitated when I told her there were verification delays." "She knows time is running out," David said. "Mrs. Henderson is getting healthier. Once she's fully recovered, she'll notice the missing money. They needed to move fast." "What happens now?" I asked. David's expression was grave. "Now we go to the police. This is bank fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. These are serious felonies. If convicted, they're looking at significant prison time." Prison. My children? In prison. I must have looked pale because Mr. Harrison quickly poured me a glass of water. "Mrs. Henderson, are you all right?" "I don't know if I can do this. They're my children." "They tried to steal $1.6 million from you while you were fighting for your life in intensive care," David said, his voice gentle but firm. "This isn't a mistake. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is calculated, premeditated theft. They forged documents. They lied to banks. They were going to take everything and leave you with nothing." "What would I have done?" I whispered. "If they'd succeeded?" "You'd have lost your home," Mr. Harrison said quietly. "Your savings, your security, your independence. At 72, after a major heart attack, you'd have been financially devastated. You'd probably have ended up dependent on them, which might have been part of their plan. The full horror hit me. They weren't just stealing money. They were stealing my entire future, my freedom, my ability to live independently. They were going to make me dependent on them, the very people who'd robbed me. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more like it, please hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. I took a deep breath. David, call the police. I want to file charges. I want everything documented, and I want to be there when they find out I know. Are you absolutely certain? I thought about the forged signatures, the Spokane address, the carefully staged transfers, the phone calls to the bank, Sandra's sweet voice asking about my health while planning to rob me blind. I'm certain. They made their choice. Now they live with the consequences. David made the call. Within 30 minutes, 2 detectives arrived at the bank, Detective Sarah Mills and Detective James Rodriguez. They were from the Financial Crimes Unit, experienced and professional. Mrs. Henderson, we understand you want to file charges against your children for attempted financial fraud, Detective Mills said. Yes, I'll tell you everything. I sat in that conference room at the bank and told the detectives everything. The heart attack, the intensive care, the bank manager's call, the forged power of attorney, every detail, every lie, every manipulation. Detective Rodriguez took notes while Detective Mills recorded everything. They were thorough, asking questions about dates, times, specific conversations. David provided the legal documents. Mr. Harrison provided the bank records. Mrs. Henderson, this is a strong case, Detective Mills said. We have documentary evidence of forgery, attempted fraud, and elder abuse. The bank's fraud prevention actually works in your favor. Everything's time-stamped and documented. What happens next? I asked. We'll need to interview your children. We'll examine the forged power of attorney document for fingerprints and handwriting analysis. We'll trace the Spokane address to see if they'd already set up accounts there. This is going to take a few days to build the full case. I want to confront them, I said. Before you arrest them, I want them to know that I know. The detectives exchanged glances. Mrs. Henderson, that's not typically advisable, Detective Rodriguez said. Confrontations can be unpredictable, sometimes dangerous. They're not violent, they're just greedy, and I need to look them in the eyes when they realize their plan failed. David spoke up. What if we arrange a controlled confrontation? Here at the bank, with Mr. Harrison present, the detectives nearby, everything recorded. Detective Mills considered this. It could work. Sometimes direct confrontation leads to confessions. If they think they're caught, they might admit everything. That would strengthen our case significantly. Set it up, I said. Call them. Tell them there's an urgent issue with my accounts that requires their immediate attention. Tell them I'm too weak to come alone and need their support. The irony of that last part burned. Mr. Harrison made the call to Sandra first, putting it on speaker. Ms. Henderson, this is Thomas Harrison from First National Bank. We need you and your brother to come to the bank immediately. There's an urgent issue with your mother's accounts. What kind of issue? Sandra's voice was sharp, worried. I'd prefer to discuss it in person. It's regarding the power of attorney documentation and the transfer requests. Can you be here within the hour? Silence. Then, yes, I'll call Michael. We'll be right there. She hung up fast, too fast. She's panicking, David said. She knows something's wrong. Good, I replied. We waited in Mr. Harrison's office. The detectives positioned themselves in an adjacent conference room with a clear view through the interior windows. David sat beside me. Mr. Harrison provided coffee and quiet reassurance. My heart was pounding, but this time it wasn't a heart attack. It was adrenaline, anger, righteous fury. 40 minutes later, the receptionist buzzed. Mr. Harrison, Sandra Henderson and Michael Henderson are here. Send them to conference room B, please. We moved to the larger conference room. I sat at the head of the table. David on my right, Mr. Harrison on my left. The detectives watched from the observation room. The door opened. Sandra walked in first. Designer suit, perfect makeup, confident smile. Michael followed, tall and professional in his business casual. Then they saw me. The color drained from Sandra's face. Michael actually stopped walking, frozen in the doorway. "Mom, what are you doing here? You should be in the hospital," Sandra said, her voice climbing an octave. "Sit down," I said quietly. "Both of you." They sat. I watched them glance at David, at Mr. Harrison, at each other, calculating, worried. "Mr. Harrison called us about some issue with your accounts," Michael started. "We came right away to help." "Stop," I said. The single word cut through the room like a blade. "Stop lying, stop pretending, stop acting like you care." Sandra reached for my hand. I pulled away. "Mom, what's wrong? You're not making sense. You've been so sick." "I know everything," I said. Each word was ice. The forged power of attorney, the address change to Spokane, the transfer authorizations, $1.6 million. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Dead silence. Michael recovered first. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. We were just trying to help manage your affairs while you were sick. You asked us to—" "I never gave you power of attorney, ever. That document is forged." I slid the paper across the table. "That's not my signature. Mr. Harrison knows it. My lawyer knows it. And the police know it." "Police?" Sandra whispered, her face going white. "Detective Mills and Detective Rodriguez from the Financial Crimes Unit. They're very interested in your activities over the past week." Michael stood up abruptly. "This is insane. Mom, you're confused. The heart attack, the medications. You're not thinking clearly. We were only trying to help protect your money while you were incapacitated. By transferring it all to Spokane, by changing my mailing address so I wouldn't see the bank statements, by forging legal documents." My voice rose. "You call that protection?" "We can explain," Sandra said desperately. "It's not what it looks like." "Then explain the Spokane address. Explain why you needed to transfer over $1 million immediately. Explain why you lied to the bank and claimed I'd authorized everything." They looked at each other. I saw the moment they realized they were caught. Sandra's eyes filled with tears, the same tears she'd used since childhood to manipulate me. Michael's jaw clenched, his hands fisting. "You know what the worst part is?" I said softly. "It's not the money. It's that you did this while I was dying, while I was in intensive care with tubes in my arms and machines keeping me alive. You were forging documents and planning to steal everything I'd worked 50 years to build." "Mom, we needed the money," Michael blurted out. "I made some bad investments. I owe people, serious people. If I don't pay them back—" "Michael," Sandra hissed, "shut up." But it was too late. He just confessed. "So you thought you'd steal from your dying mother?" I asked. "That was your solution." "We were going to pay it back," Sandra tried. "Eventually. Once Michael's situation was resolved. We weren't really stealing. You forged power of attorney documents. You lied to banks. You tried to transfer over $1 million without my knowledge or consent. That's not borrowing. That's theft." David spoke for the first time. "It's also bank fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. Each of those carries significant prison time." "Prison?" Sandra's voice was shrill. "Mom, you can't be serious. We're your children." "And I'm the mother you tried to rob," I said, "while I was fighting for my life." Michael leaned forward, his expression hardening. "Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I needed money. Yes, we moved quickly while you were sick. But think about it, Mom. That money, who are you saving it for anyway? Us, your children, your grandchildren. We're your beneficiaries. That money would come to us eventually. We just needed it now." The absolute audacity took my breath away. "So you decided to take your inheritance early, without asking, without my permission, by forging documents and committing multiple felonies?" "We didn't think you'd understand," Sandra said, dabbing at her tears. "You're always so Careful with money, so frugal. We knew you'd say no. So you forged a power of attorney and tried to steal it while I was unconscious in intensive care. We didn't think you'd find out so fast, Michael snapped. Then he seemed to realize what he'd said. I mean, you didn't think I'd find out at all, I finished. You thought by the time I was well enough to check my accounts, the money would be gone, transferred, hidden, impossible to recover. And what was I supposed to do then? A 72-year-old woman with a weak heart? Sue my own children? Report you to the police? You thought I'd just accept it and stay quiet to avoid scandal. From the way they looked at each other, I knew I'd hit the truth exactly. You would have destroyed me, I continued. Financially, emotionally, completely. I would have lost everything. My home, my security, my independence. I would have been destitute. And you... I looked at my daughter, my son, these strangers with familiar faces. You would have let that happen to your own mother. Mom, please, Sandra begged. We can fix this. We'll return everything. We'll tear up the power of attorney. We'll make this right. Just don't involve the police. Think about the grandchildren. Think about the family. I am thinking about them, I said. I'm thinking Emma and Jason deserve to learn that actions have consequences, that stealing is wrong, that family doesn't mean you can commit crimes and expect forgiveness. The door opened. Detectives Mills and Rodriguez walked in. Sandra Henderson and Michael Henderson, Detective Mills said formally. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding allegations of bank fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Sandra burst into sobs. Michael stood rigid, his face a mask of fury and fear. You're really doing this? He asked me. Your own children? You did this, I replied. The moment you forged my signature, the moment you chose money over your mother, you did this to yourselves. They were escorted out. Sandra was crying hysterically. Michael walked with his head high, but I saw his hands shaking. The conference room fell silent. I sat there, feeling ancient and hollow. David put a hand on my shoulder. Are you all right? I don't know, I said honestly. I just watched my children get taken away by police. How is anyone all right after that? Mr. Harrison quietly closed the door, giving me privacy. David sat beside me, not speaking, just present. Did I do the right thing? I asked. Yes, absolutely yes. What they did was criminal. They would have destroyed your entire financial security. You're 72 years old, Patricia. You can't rebuild a lifetime of savings. I nodded, tears finally coming. I'd held them back through everything. The confrontation, the confession, the arrests. Now they fell freely. I keep thinking about when they were little. Sandra's first day of school. Michael learning to ride a bike. Birthday parties and Christmas. Mornings. Where did I go wrong? You didn't go wrong. They made choices, bad choices, illegal choices. That's on them, not you. The next few weeks were a blur. The district attorney filed formal charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents, bank records, recorded phone calls, their own partial confessions. Both Sandra and Michael hired expensive lawyers. Michael's debt situation came to light during the investigation. He'd lost nearly $400,000 in cryptocurrency investments and owed another $200,000 to some very questionable people. Sandra had known about it and helped plan the theft to save her brother. The family fell apart. Michael's wife Jennifer filed for divorce. She brought Emma and Jason to see me once, both children crying, not understanding why their father was in trouble. I held them and told them I loved them and that sometimes adults make terrible mistakes. Sandra's husband, Tom, had known nothing about the plan. He was horrified. They separated. My church community rallied around me. Friends I'd had for 40 years brought meals, sat with me, helped me process everything. Some asked why I'd pressed charges. I told them the truth, because what they did was wrong. And being family doesn't give anyone the right to commit crimes. 3 months after that terrible day at the bank, both Sandra and Michael took plea deals. Sandra received 2 years in prison and 5 years probation. Michael got 4 years in prison and 10 years probation, plus restitution requirements. I sat in the courtroom when they were sentenced. Michael wouldn't look at me. Sandra sobbed through the entire proceeding. The judge addressed them directly. "You targeted your own mother while she was gravely ill. You violated the trust that should exist between parent and child. You committed serious crimes motivated purely by greed. These sentences reflect not just the crime, but the betrayal." I walked out of that courtroom with David beside me. The press tried to ask questions, but I ignored them. Back home, I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd collapsed 3 months ago. Everything looked the same, but nothing was the same. My children were in prison, my family was shattered, but my savings were intact. My home was secure, my future was protected. I'd survived the heart attack, I'd survived the betrayal. I was still standing, and sometimes that's the only victory that matters.